Imagine a time when the clip-clop of hooves on cobblestone streets mingled with the hissing steam of a locomotive. This was Victorian travel, a world caught between the old ways and the thrilling new. Horse-drawn carriages, stagecoaches, and then, suddenly, the mighty steam train all moved people across a rapidly changing landscape. The air itself seemed to hum with the energy of progress, a blend of familiar sounds and the unfamiliar roar of an engine. This era saw a dramatic shift, as the slow, predictable rhythm of the horse gave way to the relentless speed of steam. Railways didn't just move people. They reshaped society, shrinking distances and connecting towns in ways previously unimaginable. We're going to explore how people got around in Victorian Britain, from the bumpy ride of a stagecoach to the revolutionary journey by train and everything in between. In 1837, when Queen Victoria ascended the throne, the stagecoach was king for long-distance journeys. These sturdy vehicles, often pulled by 4 horses, were the backbone of overland travel. A single coachman, perched high, guided his team with skill, navigating often rough roads. Horses were changed every 10 to 15 miles at designated stops, ensuring a swift, if somewhat jarring pace. Booking a ticket in advance was essential, especially for popular routes, as seats were limited. These stagecoach stops were more than just places to change horses. They were bustling coaching inns. These inns served as hotels, stables, and vital social hubs, offering food, drink, and a place to rest weary travelers. Famous inns like the Bull and Mouth in London were elaborate complexes with vast courtyards, extensive stables, and multiple entrances, all designed to handle the constant flow of coaches and passengers. They were truly the service stations of their day. The stagecoach experience itself was a mix of romance and discomfort. There was a certain charm to rattling through the countryside, seeing new sights at a brisk trot. Yet it was far from luxurious. Passengers riding outside, often on the roof, were exposed to all kinds of weather: rain, wind, and the biting cold. Seating was a clear indicator of social status. First-class passengers enjoyed the relative shelter of the inside compartment, while those paying cheaper fares braved the elements on the roof. The coveted coachman's seat right next to the driver was a rare privilege, offering warmth and conversation, a status symbol for those who could secure it. Nathaniel Hawthorne, the American novelist, once complained about the crowded conditions, noting how passengers were packed in like sardines. Despite the bumps, the cold, and the occasional danger for many, stagecoach travel was an adventure, a chance to see the world beyond their village. Arrivals at coaching inns were always lively affairs. Porters rushed to assist with luggage, grooms quickly unhitched tired horses and brought out fresh ones, all while travelers stretched their legs or grabbed a quick meal. Refreshment rooms offered hurried bites for those not staying overnight. Then came the mail coaches, a specialized type of stagecoach. These were faster and more direct, prioritizing the delivery of mail over passenger comfort. They offered fewer breaks and often had no amenities, making for a harsher journey, but their efficiency made them symbols of Victorian progress. However, this efficiency came at a cost. Accidents were common and the journeys were grueling. But the dominance of the stagecoach was fleeting. A new power was emerging from the Industrial Revolution: steam. While a stagecoach might average 9 miles per hour, early trains could achieve speeds of 20 miles per hour or more. This was a revolutionary leap. The railway promised not just greater speed but also reduced costs, making travel accessible to ordinary people in a way stagecoaches never could. The stagecoach era, for all its charm and adventure, was about to be steamrolled by the unstoppable force of the railway. The rise of the railway, while exciting for many, was not without its critics and resistors. Farmers worried about sparks from the locomotives setting their fields ablaze and feared the noise would blind their sheep. Landowners, accustomed to their quiet estates, protested vehemently against railway lines cutting through their property, often demanding exorbitant prices for their land. Villages that had thrived on stagecoach traffic, with their inns and livery stables, watched in despair as their livelihoods evaporated. There's even an anecdote of a railway surveyor in the early days being physically attacked by angry coachmen, desperate to protect their trade. Beyond these practical concerns, a widespread anxiety gripped society about the effects of high-speed travel on the human body. Doctors issued warnings, advising passengers not to stare at the passing landscape for too long, fearing it could induce madness or other ailments. Yet, despite this resistance, the advance of the railways was unstoppable. The expansion was rapid and relentless. The Liverpool to Manchester Railway, one of the earliest and most successful, transported over 100 hours of Warren passengers in its first 5 months alone, proving the immense public demand. By 1852, just 15 years after Queen Victoria ascended the throne, most major English cities were connected by rail, and the familiar sight of a railway station had become a permanent fixture in the landscape. The railways brought with them a profound change in the perception of time itself. Before trains, local solar time varied from town to town. A clock in Bristol might be a few minutes different from a clock in London. This didn't matter much when travel was slow, but with trains needing to adhere to strict timetables across vast distances, a standardized time became essential. By the 1840s, railway time, based on Greenwich Mean Time, was adopted across the network, forcing towns and cities to adjust their clocks. Punctuality, once a flexible concept, became paramount. Missing a train could derail an entire day's plans, and the precise measurement of time transformed from a practical necessity into a national obsession. The railway experience itself mirrored the rigid social structure of Victorian society. First-class carriages offered cushioned seats and eventually oil lamps for evening travel, providing a degree of comfort and privacy. Second-class compartments were often cold, drafty, and less opulent. But it was the third-class carriages that truly democratized travel. These were often open wooden wagons, exposed to the elements, basic and uncomfortable. Yet they were incredibly popular, making mass travel affordable for the first time. Despite moral warnings from some who viewed seaside trips as a corrupting influence, tourist trains to coastal towns became immensely popular, allowing working-class families to experience a day at the beach. For the Victorian traveller, certain essentials became indispensable. Bradshaw's Guide, a thick volume of timetables and connections, was a must-have companion. Its pages consulted diligently to plan complex journeys. For an extra 3 pence, passengers could purchase railway insurance, offering a substantial $100,000 compensation in case of death, a stark reminder of the inherent dangers of early rail travel. Baggage regulations were tight. The railway wasn't responsible for luggage unless an extra fee was paid for its transport. Weight limits were strict, and heavy valises incurred additional charges. Travelers were often advised to carry a single, leather-tagged valise for ease. Early baggage was stored on the roof of carriages or with the guard, a role inherited from the coaching days, but eventually separate luggage vans or carriages became standard. Booking a ticket offered different experiences depending on one's class. Only first-class passengers received numbered seats. Second- and third-class travelers had to arrive early to secure a compartment. A common sight at any station was the railway bookstall, a place to buy newspapers and periodicals for the journey. Wymith's, the famous bookseller, opened its first railway bookstall at Euston Station in 1848, marking the beginning of a new era for travel reading. Passengers often needed to carry small paper cutters, as many newspapers and magazines of the time were printed with uncut pages, requiring the reader to separate them as they went along. As the Victorian era progressed, railway travel continued its rapid evolution, transforming from a novel, somewhat perilous adventure into a more refined and accessible experience. Train technology advanced significantly. Locomotives became more powerful and efficient, pulling longer trains at greater speeds. Passenger comfort saw steady improvements too. First-class carriages grew increasingly luxurious, with plush seating, better heating, and more elaborate interior decor. Even second class improved, shedding some of its earlier draftiness for more enclosed and comfortable compartments. Third class, while still basic, moved away from open wagons to enclosed carriages, offering protection from the weather, making long journeys more tolerable for the working masses. Safety measures and regulations also tightened, reducing the frequency of the horrific accidents that plagued the early days of rail travel. Signaling systems became more sophisticated and track maintenance improved, all contributing to a safer, more reliable network. The railway network itself expanded dramatically, weaving a dense web across Britain, connecting remote towns to major industrial centers and making travel between regions faster and easier than ever before. While railways dominated long-distance travel, cities still relied heavily on other forms of transport for local movement. Omnibuses, large horse-drawn carriages designed to carry multiple passengers, were a common sight on urban streets. They offered a relatively cheap way to travel across town, though the experience was often crowded, noisy, and bumpy. Passengers jostled for space on the hard benches, enduring the constant clip-clop of hooves and the shouts of the conductor. Social dynamics within these confined spaces were fascinating, a microcosm of Victorian society, with strangers sharing close quarters for the duration of their journey. For those seeking more privacy or speed, hansom cabs and hackney carriages were the preferred choice. These private hire vehicles, also horse-drawn, provided a quicker, more direct service. The hansom cab with its distinctive 2 wheels and driver perched at the back became an iconic symbol of London. Drivers, often known for their colorful personalities and intimate knowledge of city shortcuts, navigated the busy streets with remarkable skill. The ever-present smell of horse manure, a defining olfactory feature of Victorian urban life, permeated every street where these vehicles operated. Towards the end of the century, a new mode of personal transport emerged, the bicycle. Early bicycles, like the penny farthing with its enormous front wheel, were challenging and often dangerous to ride. However, with the invention of the safety bicycle in the 1880s, featuring equally sized wheels and a chain drive, cycling exploded in popularity. This offered unprecedented freedom, especially for women who could now travel independently without the need for a chaperone or horse, significantly impacting social norms and fashion. Despite the initial dangers of learning to ride and navigating uneven roads, the bicycle quickly became a symbol of modernity and personal liberty. Victorian travel, however, was not without its dangers and challenges. Road accidents involving stagecoaches, omnibuses, and even private carriages were common, often resulting from unruly horses, poor road conditions, or reckless drivers. Early railway accidents could be catastrophic, with collisions and derailments claiming many lives due to primitive signaling, mechanical failures, or human error. While the romantic image of highwaymen robbing stagecoaches largely faded by the later Victorian era, crime on roads and at railway stations was still a concern for travellers. Exposure to the elements, particularly for those in cheaper open carriages or during long, arduous journeys, made travellers susceptible to illness and discomfort. The general chaos and unpredictability of travel, from delayed trains to overcrowded omnibuses, meant that a journey was rarely a seamless affair. Despite these challenges, the broader social and economic impacts of improved travel were profound. Increased mobility allowed people from all social classes to travel further and more frequently, connecting families and facilitating migration for work. Tourism and leisure activities flourished, with seaside resorts and picturesque countryside destinations becoming accessible to a wider population. Commerce and industrial growth were dramatically boosted as goods and raw materials could be transported more efficiently across the country. This led to changes in social interactions, breaking down some regional identities and fostering a more unified national culture. In conclusion, the Victorian era witnessed a dramatic transformation of travel, moving from the age of the horse to the age of steam and beyond. It was an era defined by a blend of romance and adventure, where the thundering hooves of a stagecoach gave way to the rhythmic chug of a locomotive. Despite the hardships and dangers, Victorian transportation laid the groundwork for modern travel, leaving an enduring legacy on our understanding of speed, punctuality, and connectivity. The journey through Victorian Britain was a testament to human ingenuity, a period where the world quite literally began to move faster, bringing people and places closer than ever before.